noticed hydrating on the first floor and speculated that he must have scored big in the dungeon. They also spotted a few crystals on the ground. Xiao Zhang was annoyed, accusing Wu of digging for so long only to unearth so few. Who apologized, explaining that all his shovels had broken, but Xiao Zhang still berated him. He complained about their rotten luck dealing with an incompetent digger and how the small number of magic crystals couldn't even cover the cost of the potions they used. Xiao Zhang reminded Wu that they had allowed him to get the title for free, so they claimed all the magic crystals and left him behind. However, I turned back, telling him to wait. She handed him a crystal as promised. He thanked her, asking her name and if she would be willing to exchange phone numbers. She introduced herself as Kiwi. Zion gave him her number. I advised him to leave the dungeon quickly as it was about to close, which he agreed with. Outside the dungeon, the players were puzzled as to why the squad hadn't exited yet. When the door slowly opened, a cheer erupted from the crowd. They swarmed the squad, extending guild invitations, attempting to buy a dungeon, clearing secrets, and offering to purchase any valuable items they might have obtained, preferring solitude to crowded spaces. He slipped away unnoticed, leaving Chen Xin's group and the crowd at the dungeon gate behind. He found a quiet spot to stop, confident that he wouldn't be disturbed. He opened the game interface, aware that he had completed the profession change mission, which meant he could now change professions. He knew that demon warriors were known for their strength and defense, with bodies as hard as stone that few weapons could damage. Demon hunters, on the other hand, had extremely high agility and attack power, capable of converting all agility into attack power, terrifying their enemies. Lastly, demon warlocks were renowned for their powerful souls, expertise in various healing spells, and ability to summon death spirits and skeletons. A powerful demon warlock could single-handedly take on an entire army. Being a Libra, he often struggled with decision-making. He understood that a demon warrior was essentially a tank. A demon hunter was akin to an offensive assassin, and a demon warlock was more of a summoner. He wished he could select all three and wondered if that was possible. The notification informed him that he could only choose one profession unless he obtained a hero certificate, which would allow an additional profession. He suspected that securing a hero certificate would require the goddess's help, but he decided against seeking her out for the time being, as he feared her wrath upon seeing him. He opted for the demon hunter, believing it was the most suitable for him, as it allowed him to convert all his agility to attack power when necessary. A bright light enveloped him as the notification confirmed his chain range of profession to demon hunter, indicating that his attributes had been altered. His current level was 13, with 120 experience points out of 38 needed for the next level. He held the titles of Rabbit Hunter and Wolf Hunter. His health points were 300 mana points, 150, and his strength and agility had increased by 28, physique by 14, wisdom by 12, sense by 13, with 3 undistributed attribute points remaining. He also obtained a new skill called Hunt Mark, which allowed the demon hunter to tag a target within the mark's duration. The hunter would be aware of the target's location, deal double damage to the monster, and discern its weak point upon attack. This ability could only mark one target at a time, but upon killing the marked target, the Hunt Mark skill's cooldown would reset. Failure to kill the target would trigger a 24-hour cooldown, and activating the skill required 50 mana points. He was thrilled to acquire the Hunt Mark skill, considering it exceptionally useful for solo duels. Meanwhile, that the Player Association Management Center, Bing Yang reported to Lei Q that the Goddess Martial Artist Guild was engaged in large-scale combat at the Skyline Trees Western battleground against Dark Elves. Tragically, 40 players had died. The Goddess Martial Artist went missing and the clan's co-leader was killed. The Goddess Martial Artist Guild is a unique profession. It is a battle-oriented guild. Under direct military jurisdiction, they typically abstain from dungeon raids, preferring to fight monsters on the front line. When Lakeview inquired about how widespread the knowledge of this incident was, Bingyun assured him that to prevent chaos and panic. The information had been contained. Lake Hugh's concern deepened when Being Young informed him that the higher-ups wished for them to dispatch other player guilds to the front line to provide support. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of a city, a man was riding in a carriage passing through the Sky Tree Shield. As they crossed the barrier, his phone began to ring incessantly. Retrieving his phone, he noticed he had regained signal and saw a series of angry messages from Ma. She criticized him for his negligence as a guardian and informed him that Mang was ill and needed to be taken to the hospital later. At a city's central hospital, Ma was peeling an apple beside a sickly Meg who was resting on the bed. Woobers through the door, anxiously asking about Meng's condition. Mom, clutching the fruit knife tightly, admonished him to speak quietly as Meng had just fallen asleep. Ma questioned his whereabouts over the past 2 days, pointing out that he hadn't noticed Meng's high fever. Wu replied that he had been busy trying to earn money. Upon being asked about his success, he excitedly told Ma that he had indeed managed to earn some. He expressed his relief at finally being able to pay the rent, medical fees, water leak repairs, and the cost of the TV that Mang had damaged. Skeptically, Ma pointed out that as his landlord for many years, she had only seen him accrue losses and had never seen him make any money. Wu then produced the perfect blue crystals from his inventory and suggested that she sell them, believing it would suffice. Ma questioned if he had been to the dungeons, but Wu merely replied that he wanted to be a miner. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. A nurse asked which of them was a family member of Mangas. Dr. Zhu had some information to share. Both Wu and responded simultaneously. After a moment of speechless mutual surprise, Wu suggested that he should go. A few minutes later, he found himself in Dr. Zhu's office. The doctor solemnly advised him to brace himself before handing over Meng's diagnosis. Stunned, Wu read the diagnosis, revealing high levels of magic elements in Meng's body consistent with magic element syndrome. Once cancer was humanity's greatest health fear, now in the new era, magic element syndrome had assumed that role. Ever since the game invaded Earth, the air had been composed not only of nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon dioxide, but also a new particle known as a magic element. Most people remained unaffected by the magic element, but some bodies absorbed it from the air, causing an accumulation of magic elements that had numerous negative effects. These included continuous high fever, excessive sleepiness, loss of appetite, and even the appearance of black dots. Dr. Zhu informed Wu that current medicine couldn't cure the syndrome. Only protective treatment was possible. However, given Meng's body had 10 times more magic elements than the average patient, he feared even this may not be effective. Devastated, Wu sat on a bench. Clutching Meng's diagnosis, he understood that it was already a miracle that Meng was alive. However, he knew he couldn't surrender so easily. He decided to raid the burial ground, where there was a chance to find Lassos Tears, an S-rank item that could cure all illnesses. Named after the goddess of light and hope from the stories, it was rumored that her tears could cure any ailment. Such a curative item could only be found in the burial ground, a place that represented death. The dungeon had a difficulty level of C, a level restriction of 10 to 30, and only a single party capacity. He understood they couldn't form a team and would have to tackle the dungeon solo. Most players wouldn't be able to clear the dungeon, but he was confident that he wasn't the weakling who could only defeat horned rabbits any longer. He returned to Meng's room, and Ma asked him with concern about the doctor's diagnosis and if Meng was all right. He explained it was just a normal fever, but the doctor said the money for the medical fees wasn't sufficient and thus he needed to pay more. Outrage, Ma argued that they had all already paid $3,000 that morning. She questioned whether they had exhausted their funds in less than a day. Ma reassured him that if money was tight, the rental fee could wait until after Meng had recovered. As Wu broke down in tears, he acknowledged Ma's kindness, yet Ma replied that if it weren't for Meng, she would have evicted him long ago. Chiding him, she tapped him on his back and mentioned that he was covered in dirt. She insisted he should not touch her and go clean up quickly, as she intended to take care of Meng for the night, he realized he was covered in dust and sand from digging holes in the demon wolf dungeon where he had also battled. The boss, consequently, his entire body was battered and dirty. Acknowledging Ma's advice, he said he would take a bath. First, however, Mon patiently told him to leave later. While showering, he realized that after joining the demon race, his body had changed. He had developed a potent urge to destroy things despite only being level 13. His attributes exceeded those of most level 20 players. Using the Hunt Mark skill, he could solo a D-ranked dungeon without worries. However, he knew soloing a C-ranked dungeon would be challenging, so he needed to enhance his overall combat ability. After his contemplation, he stepped outside as city's Chang and Street was a bustling business district where players bought and sold weapons. As he strolled down the street, he heard a caged monster wailing. The seller was convincing a lady that the pet they were selling was exceptionally safe. Then he pushed a button while instructing the lady to do the same. The monster got electrocuted and collapsed in its cage, severely injured. The seller assured the lady that in addition to the electric collar, they had removed all of its fangs to prevent it from biting people. Satisfied, the lady agreed to make the purchase. He knew the earth was no longer what it used to be, yet humans remained the same. A minute later, he reached the magic crystal exchange store. Looking at the exchange rate of crystals, he noticed a drop. Other players expressed frustration too, but they understood that they had no option as more and more players raided dungeons. He opened his inventory and retrieved several crystals. The employee greeted him and explained that the current price for E-rank magic crystals was 455 and Drank Bank was 965. He then asked if he was sure he wanted to proceed with the exchange. Pausing, he told the employee he had another magic crystal. Upon showing it, he inquired about its worth. The employee was surprised to see it and carefully examined it. He was informed it was a D-rank perfect magic crystal. Suddenly, a man behind him lamented that it was only a D-rank perfect magic crystal, good for crafting only a D-rank weapon. The man added that half a year ago such a crystal would have been in high demand and worth more, with people clamoring to purchase it. The employee offered $10,000 for the crystal and asked his opinion. He agreed, stating it was not a problem. The employee thanked him for his business and assured him the payment would be transferred right away after deducting the tax. A total of $133,200 was deposited into his account. Later, he visited Lockel's weapons store. He browsed around and noticed a Wind Frost's long sword priced at 55,000 and a water crystal dagger costing $95,000. He exited the shop, loudly criticizing it for lacking elite equipment. However, the reality was he simply couldn't afford it. While walking down the street, he spotted shining blades lying on the ground. He picked them up, recognizing them as Baldur's cursed swords with an attack power of 1e4-45. It was a B-rank weapon with no level restriction. It could inflict additional damage on death spirits and could absorb death souls to enhance the weapon's attack power up to a maximum of 20 stacks. A human wielding the weapon would lose 10 HP. The sword was originally the god of light Baldur's, created from a type of parasitic trees branches found around the divine land. After Baldur was betrayed by the gods, his weapon became cursed. Astounded by the three effects of the sword, he asked the seller about the price. The seller quoted $15,000. He argued that the weapon was not suitable for humans and questioned if the price wasn't too high, but the seller countered, stating it was a B-rank weapon and if he didn't want it, he was free to leave. He then pulled out a large axe from his inventory and asked the seller if he would consider a trade. The seller held the large sword and noted his tax was only drank. However, the seller agreed to the trade, admitting he had been trying to sell the sword for several days. As he walked away, the seller laughed at his perceived victory, thinking he had made a fantastic deal. Who knew, if the seller realized he wasn't human, he might have been shocked into unconsciousness. Still, the seller believed he had made a fortune and considered the axe a good trade. Later, he arrived at the hospital and found Mang and Ma asleep. He gently covered Ma with a blanket and walked to The nurse's station, he requested the nurse to upgrade room 27 to a VIP sikram. Well guys, that's the end of the video. If you like this video, comment part 2 in the comments section. Also subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and like the video. Thank you for watching, and see you next time again.